Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Play2GROW event hosted by Admiral Media, your leading marketing agency for apps. Actually sponsored by Adjust, probably the best mobile measurement partner you can find on the planet. Today we are having amazing speakers and panelists here, but what really makes the difference is actually that we have players. So what you can expect is not only some interesting talks, but also some of us are actually playing a game and you can cheer to us and support us winning some games. So give us and our speakers some applause. Just put a yeah or some cool emojis into the YouTube chat. So this is actually the payment that we get tonight. So bear with us. Also, what you can actually expect, you will find in the agenda of the event, and hopefully it's written in the description under this video as well. But to walk you through very quickly, we will have an amazing talk from Paul, CTO and co-founder of Adjust, and he will guide us through the impact of iOS 14 privacy updates and what this really means for us in tracking and how we should use tracking in the future. And after that, we will, or not after that, but also we will learn something about influencer marketing in Eastern Europe, presented by Anya from Imperia Online, a massive gaming company out there by Stillfront. Some of you have heard about the latest news, who acquired whom, and are way more informed about these kind of things than me, but she certainly knows a ton of things about influencer marketing. And we will also later discuss this in a panel with some amazing panelists, what this really means in context of iOS 14 and how we should pay influencers and so on and so on. When tracking doesn't work the way it worked before, these kind of things. But let's open this event with an amazing speaker from Snapchat, Sam Bevan, and he will tell us how to grow our business on Snapchat. So again, this is a live event. Expect things to break, but stay with us. We are trying to fix them as fast as possible if something breaks. And don't forget, if you want to ask any questions, put them in the comments or in the live chat. We will try to pick them up and answer your questions straight with the speakers, panelists. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Have fun.
Hello, Play2GROW.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Anya, and I'm part of marketing and business development team at Imperia Online. Today, I would like to talk a little bit more about one very trendy topic, the influencer marketing. Before moving forward, I would like to give you some insights about our company. Imperia Online is a company founded in 2005, and we are based in Sofia, Bulgaria. We are actually the largest game developers so far. The team is of 90 people, and we handle everything in-house, from development, art, business development, community management, and etc. Since 2018, we became part of Stillfront Group. Actually, Stillfront Group is popular as being one of the biggest group of independent companies. So far, we are 15 companies from worldwide. Our portfolio contains 27 games. We started as a web browser developer. Of course, later on, we also moved to mobile. I'm part of the team for already 7 years, and actually I'm speaker for the first time, so apologies for any troubles on the way. Our company has been attending a lot of events and conferences around the world, so I'll be glad to give some insights from our experience so far. Moving forward. Today, I'm going to speak about the influencer marketing in specific for Eastern Europe. As I mentioned before, we are based in Bulgaria, so it makes perfect sense when we start looking for new opportunities for user acquisition. We came up with the idea of running influencer marketing, of course, to hit to this market. The countries which we took here are under our research based on our player base. And that's how we came up with the countries which were part of ex-Soviet Union and also countries which are having similar markets to us. The population of the region has more than 300 million users, and the average age is around 41 years old. Just to compare them with the population in regions from Tier 1, they're way much younger. The device distribution in the region is around 75% having Android. An interesting fact here is that the phone is seen as a luxury. So it's a common thing even to see people having more expensive phones rather their own cars. The GDP per capita is around $26,000, which is way lower compared to countries like Germany, US, and etc. These are major points which are going to make much more sense moving forward to my insights. So what's the next step? To see how the influencer marketing in the region looks like. The market is lagging behind. A lot of things which were popular 4 years ago in Germany, for instance, they are now becoming popular here. This, of course, influenced to the way how the influencers are working. They still prefer to work on their own and skip the agency. This, of course, leads to many troubles in terms of the fact that each country have their own language, so there is a language barrier. At the same time, working with a direct person brings much more paperwork. When you come to a point that you are going to sign an agreement, for instance, there are going to be a lot of questions back and forward, and in the end, most probably the agreement is not going to be even executed in the right way. So you have always to first to think in a way working with an agency. There are a lot actually currently working and operating in the region. All these facts which I mentioned are also leading to the next point that it's really hard to work with them directly with the person. An interesting fact about the influencers are that they are making 10 times less than a regular user acquisition campaign. So they're more open to search for a way how to gain their revenue. That's how they came up with the idea of doing integrated videos. But here, an important fact is that, as I mentioned, every single country in the region has their own language. So if you go with an integrated video in the region, you should not expect that you're going to hit a lot of millions of views. So the best thing to go further is aim for a dedicated video. First of all, just because they're much more expensive rather than integrated video, the influencers are going to more open to create such one. At the same time, you're going to reach this type of hype you're looking for to this market. So we have an overview of the influencer marketing there. Next point is to see how the actual Eastern European gamer looks like. The region is not popular of being that wealthy, so mobile and PC are still having the biggest share. Users in this region are wisely spending their money just because of there are so many choices. This leads to the point that the console is still a luxury. In the region, actually, there are still a lot of PC manufacturers who are giving the opportunity to the players to just go and buy a game or a feature very easily. At the same time, this leads to the place that players in Eastern Europe are more reluctant to pay for premium games. Still, in the region, there are a lot of torrent websites through which you can have access to paid games for free. So it builds this mindset in the players, why should I buy something when I can find it for free? Yet the region is popular of having really strong national identification among the users. We're pretty much the same here, but yet we are really easily going against each other. This is a really nice way for regarding the monetization in the games, actually. We gather in alliances and go in battles really easy between each other, which makes the whole gameplay to a really next level and much more interesting for everyone. Recently, there was a research among 10,000 players coming from tier 1 countries, and they were asked, which are the most annoying players in the games? Around 82% of them explained and answered that all of them are coming from Eastern Europe. This is an interesting fact, but altogether those negative facts I stated, I would like to end up with the fact that players coming from this region are really highly competitive. we are really going in games with our own passion, and together with the fact that players in the region are not really open-minded in spending that much money on games, brings to the point that they are spending much more time in your games and makes the whole gameplay very interesting for everyone. So we have the market, we have the overview of the region, we have the Eastern European gamer. When we start thinking about the idea of going forward with an influencer marketing campaign, we came to this point that a lot of ad blocker systems were gaining they reached a lot of shares. So we were about to find a way how to go in a different direction to find a change. So we came up with the idea to create a highly engaging influencer marketing campaign and benefit from the synergies between the influencers. But we came up with a problem. Imperium Line is a game built for 15 years, and a 60-second video is really not enough to show the whole battle mechanics and get the players addicted to the gameplay. So we start thinking, what's the solution? We ended up with the idea of making people want to play the game because of the influencers, not of the actual gameplay. We picked up 8 of the best performing content creators in Bulgaria and gave them the opportunity to create dedicated videos or live streams according to our expectations. Actually, yes, we put the framework how the campaign is going to look like, but at the same time, we consider also their creativity and give them some. We shared their ideas together with the campaign. One of the influencers actually followed a very popular Twitch streamer. The influencer was open to the idea of giving additional rewards to the viewers just for doing random stuff in game. Actually, during the whole campaign, all of the influencers got really addicted to the game. They built their own alliances and they were constantly asking people to join their alliances, to meet at a specific time, go and conquer new lands, and etc. So all this was making the whole gameplay very interesting for everyone who were actually taking part of the game. How the real campaign looked like and what we added there. We created a special anniversary cross-device realm. Actually, everyone were able to log in this realm and start from ground zero. This is an important part because there are still players who are really not fond of joining in the middle of the game. So this is a very important point for launching such realm. The next thing was to take under consideration that for the influencers is very important the communication they have with the players. So we created a feature which helped this communication to go smoothly and easily. Actually, we also gave the opportunity to the players and the influencers to share in the game videos and exchange experience. After clarifying the communication between the content makers and the players, the next part was to clear the communication between the influencers and the team. That's how we ended up with creating a Discord channel. The influencers, top QAs from the team, BizDev, everyone were part of this channel, and thanks to it, we were able to answer very quickly any type of questions arising from the communication between the influencers and the players. Next was to choose the right date of launching the videos. We decided to do all these videos to be launched on the same day. The day we have chosen was when our game was about to be featured on Google Play and App Store. Together with these facts, we managed to create this huge hype we were aiming for, and there were basically no gamer in Bulgaria who wasn't aware of the influencer wars happening at Imperium Line at that time. After the launch of the campaign, the next step, of course, and moving forward to the very interesting points, are the results. What we've seen from the campaign is that we reached the highest new users engagement. the loyalty of the players continued even after the campaign was stopped. The raise was around 10% compared with the user coming from a regular campaigns we run through Google and Facebook. We reached top charts in Google Play. Just because of the videos, and they were also acquiring new users, and we were sending those users to Google Play, there was a lot of organic traffic which helped us to boost the game in the store. Several videos also reached the top trending at YouTube. The video which I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago about the guy who was giving additional rewards to the viewers doing random stuff in the videos actually became in top 3. At the end, what we saw was the ARPDAU was lower compared to the one which we received from regular campaigns. That wasn't something we were actually not expecting. The average paying users in Imperial Online are 35 years old. During this time, the average age of the viewers of the influencers was around 18. So basically, there was no much. But what we did in the result of the campaign was that we created this huge amount of players joining at the same time, competing between each other and making the whole gameplay on a very really next level. What was next about us was to start exploring more further this opportunity. Over the years with other games of ours, we have exploring working with influencers for different markets. We worked with influencers in Russia, just because of the fact that we didn't manage to create this close connection, this friendly environment between the company and the influencer. The result of the campaign was a fail. But at the same time, we worked with local publishers for regions like Russia and also Middle East, where just because of their help, their understanding of the market, and the fact that they also speak the local language, so we skipped the language barrier, the campaigns launched there were more successful. So that's actually why I mentioned in the very beginning, aim working with an agency or a publisher for this very specific market. What we actually at the moment do is that we run another influencer campaign for another title of ours, Siege World War II. It's a fully mobile title developed by Simutronics, also part of Steelfront Group. The results which we met with Imperial Online, we decided that we have to give another try with a game which has a much younger audience. And so far we already see a lot of boosted KPIs and a very successful campaign, which is actually at the moment ongoing. At the end, I would like to give some intakes which will be important for launching your own campaign with influencers. You have to work closely with them. You have to create a close connection with them. Be friendly. They really like this one. Communicate with them through Facebook, WhatsApp, Discord, no matter, whatever works for both of the sides. Next one is to aim for a dedicated video. In the region, as mentioned, it's not that wealthy. So a dedicated video there is going to cost most probably around 500 euro. Just to compare it with a dedicated video in Italy, can go up to 20,000 euro. State clearly your requirements. Yes, put your frame, explain what are you expecting, and follow all the leads so it doesn't harm the brand. But at the same time, consider the fact that all those influencers really well know their users. They know what to expect from them. They know what they like. So this goes actually to the communication and work closely with them, as I mentioned. Consider having additional budget for rewards. During our campaigns together with the in-game rewards, we were giving some additional ones like Google cards, VR sets, and etc. This came from, especially from the content makers. They said that the players really are fond of such things. They really like this incentive. So every single region works in a different way. For example, in Bulgaria, this is a popular way of receiving additional rewards. In Middle East, they are more fond of luxury rewards and etc. But this also comes from the way of working with agency, publisher, and etc. And in the end, don't expect always to have a positive ROI. It's not always about really hitting to the highest KPIs. As a really nice suggestion here is you have to aim for those players. They are going to spend much more time in your game. They are going to be passionate about it. They are going to make the whole gameplay very interesting for everyone who are actually taking part from worldwide. So basically, that's it. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Well, that was Anya from Imperia Online. I hope you learned a little bit about influencer marketing. And I guess what we can learn from influencer marketing in Eastern Europe can also easily be applied to Western Europe. Don't forget that you can ask your questions, put them in a chat, or give also maybe some applause to our presenters to encourage them to stay with us for the next time, maybe. Up next, we are playing another game. This time we will see Tobias Berner, the founder of Lavu and investor in various other companies, running through the art of rally with us. And let's see what his thoughts are about influencer marketing, what he has learned from Lavu in the past. We are back in 1 minute. Stay with us. Happy to have you here, actually.
Thank you for the invitation.
Maybe you introduce, or I introduce yourself while you're playing this
Fuck.
extremely challenging game.
Yeah.
Toby, you founded or co-founded Lavu a couple of years ago with some super successful exit in the end of the day. I know that you had really great success with influencer marketing in the past. Anya was just presenting what their experience was with Eastern European influencers. In which countries did you run influencer marketing predominantly?
So
and
we
pay
start
attention on the haystacks.
Yeah, we start basically in the German-speaking countries, but there was no influencer marketing at all. It's called more like 2012. It's called more product placements. Influencer marketing came out a few years later, and we just saw that some really nice, funny guys reach out to us and asking us if we can make like a product placement and give them some money. And I thought this would be not a good idea because they look so creepy. But then in the end, we sent over to every YouTube channel basically an offer because the traffic was so amazing, and it helps us back in the day scaling so fast because no one else using this for a performance channel. 2012 and 2013, and then we expand this to more countries, Spain, Italy, and to the French market, and it's doing really well. And we always try to understand the performance on every channel. Now it's not so easy anymore, and in terms of also for a performance deal, nobody really wants to have a performance deal. They're asking only for like ECPM deals, so this makes it not so interesting to us anymore.
So you say the market has developed a lot more, right? So the influencers on the main channels got more and more, let's say, educated how to make deals. They have managers and these kind of things, right? That makes it certainly a little bit more expensive, but has the quality changed at the same time a little bit? Or is it still like more or less creepy content very often?
It really depends on the channel. Now you have more transparency on the price tiers. So back in the days, some agencies there are also some agencies. So 2012 and 13, but they collect more like over 50%. Some of them over 100% of the money, and the influencer basically got nothing. And this was really unfair and not clear where our money goes to. But it was so intransparent that you can have better deals. So that was the big difference to now. And also we invested back in the days in a company who's organized all these influencer deals called Reach Hero, because we understand really early that it makes totally sense to have a platform and to find a way to scale it more structured. Otherwise, you have some influencer marketing managers in the company. They reach out to every YouTuber and try to negotiate the deal, and everything is different. Everything is really hard to scale. This is the I think a huge difference to now.
I believe so. I see that with the current influencer marketing campaigns that we are running for some of our clients, that the management behind that is so time consuming. It's insane. You need so many people to get involved, to get something out of them. And then the influencers are producing very often videos that clients won't approve. You mentioned something like brand, like how the brand is presented in those videos and placements. Is it something that brands should actually really focus on, or is it something they should maybe ignore instead and take the big reach that those influencers can get and keep it more natural, fitting the actual channel that they are in?
I think it's really depends. It really depends on the state of the brand and of the KPIs what you try to optimize. If it's just reach, brand reach, then I mean then you should definitely focusing more on, or be focused more on the quality. If it's performance, you should let the influencer create something in their style, and they hopefully know what's the best for the channels. So I saw really a lot of different types of performances, but then also if you're making a performance deal, the influencers figure out, how can I incentivize users to get more money from the advertiser. Means then they also say, download this app, then you will have the opportunity of an Amazon gift card, things like that. And this is then basically incentive traffic. Also brings
like winning games and stuff.
Nothing. No.
That's true. Maybe one last question. I think that was Juan from Glovo who was asking, what volume of users can we expect from influencer marketing campaigns? Do you have maybe some insights to share here?
There's everything is possible. But I would definitely recommend to go to smaller ones. I mean, now smaller ones is under 10 millions. So we also tried out like Neymar in the past. Spent them. We spent 30. Neymar, the football player. We make a deal with his manager, 30K for one Facebook post, and this guy has over 50 million followers on Facebook. And then if you look on the results of the link, what he's posting, it was okay, but not for 30K. I mean, so the value is maybe 5K. I would definitely focus more on a brand fit. So that's the best advice. If you like doing a dating app, then you looking for channels who they are really authentic and also in the dating game. If you but not like to brand for a football player, it's nothing for a dating app. So there's no fit at all, and this feels not authentic at all. And then you can expect a nice outcome.
All right, cool. Toby, thank you very much for sharing the insights. I see that you finished the round, right? Like, what's your time now? 7 minutes? Is that what I'm seeing here?
It's always 7. Yeah.
You won't win the competition with this. Cool. Thanks for driving. Thanks for sharing some insights here. Up next, I think we will have Paul from Adjust talking about iOS 14. So stay with us. Cool. That was Toby from Lavu. long years. He was CMO in the company. I was working with Toby for a long time, and we sometimes still do. He can definitely share a lot more insights with any of us. Just ask your questions in the chat. Again, the next speaker should appear in just a minute, and you will learn a lot more about iOS 14 and how Adjust will and can help you tracking your performance marketing campaigns, even after the privacy updates. And maybe he's even sharing some secret insights here. I don't know. Let's see.
Hi. First of all, Andre, thanks for having me and putting this event on. And most of all, thanks for actually picking a racing game, which suits me quite well. So I'm the light blue car, by the way, in case anyone has been paying attention. And I want to talk about iOS 14 because I'm pretty sure everyone listening is super excited about iOS 14 as much as we are. And specifically the changes that Apple has made to the ability to access the RDFA, and actually a lot of more things that people didn't really kind of pay attention to once they kind of thought they got the headline. That's why the first thing we want to do is a little recap. That means let's look at the things that actually changed with iOS 14. And Apple introduced two frameworks to handle two actually kind of different things. And the first one is the App Tracking Transparency, short ATT, which basically is a framework to gather consent and to have the ability to run an SDK inside an app. We're going to talk about that more in a second because most people kind of confuse that with just the ability to access the RDFA. That is actually not what this consent framework is for. On the other side, Apple updated the SKAdNetwork, which existed, of course, before iOS 14, but basically got zero attention. And we're going to look at that too. So, first, app tracking transparency. As it was announced, Apple said, hey, if you want to have access to the RDFA, you need consent. And that was kind of the headline that gathered all of the attention. The problem with that is literally the second point that Apple mentioned that no one seemed to have paid a lot of attention to, which is that all third-party SDKs that gather any device information and send it somewhere where it could be used for something like analytics or quite literally anything. It really goes from showing ads to doing product analytics, need consent. You're not allowed to actually initialize an SDK without having consent. And that is one of the kind of big things that people didn't really kind of catch on, because that makes a lot of difference if I can still, for example, show ads without consent. And due to this exact definition, you cannot, which is pretty big, right? That's a much bigger change than most people really kind of anticipated, given that they were all just going, oh, the RDFA is no longer there. That is actually on the list of problems for app publishers having access to the RDFA. I'd say barely makes the top 10, given that you're not allowed to run any SDK without consent, right? We have also, of course, seen a delay, right? Apple put this out, and I don't think they kind of got that feedback from app publishers beforehand. And they got a lot of pushback from app publishers saying, hey, the time frame doesn't work for us. All the changes that you want to do, all the clarifications came very, very late. This clarification that all SDKs are meant came in August. And that presented such a challenge for most publishers that they said, hey, this is impossible for us to be able to produce an app version that can be compliant, right? There was also a lot of open questions. What about gaming frameworks that have analytics and tracking kind of baked into them? How can you not initialize them without consent? That doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're not allowed to provide a subpar experience to someone that doesn't consent, which makes, again, most gaming engines that have some type of tracking built in very difficult, right? So you can also read up on the delay and what this means, but basically it means as long as you're not asking for consent right now, everything works as it was before. iOS 14 will behave exactly the same way as iOS 13 as long as you don't throw the Apple pop-up, which is kind of the kind of headline here, that you should probably not try to throw that, just to test things. So let's look at the two sides of the market, supply and demand. Of course, those of you who are meant here will probably know. The news here is you will have to get consent. You will have to somehow, in your user experience, manage to actually get the user to consent so that you can initialize your SDKs to show advertisement, so that you can read the IDFA, and so that attribution works and your whole monetization works. The good news is you now have probably around 4 to 6 months to try this out. That means you can try a lot of different UX without showing the Apple prompt to see if the user or what has a good opt-in rate. We've actually collected from our UX team a tremendous amount of work in this blog article, and I think you can just check this out on our blog. There's a pretty long article that helps you to understand where in your UX would it fit to actually ask and explain consent. That's the main point here, is that you actually, first of all, have to explain to the user what's going on and why you're doing this, right? And this will be in your app anyway before throwing the actual Apple pop-up. And during the testing, we would strongly suggest that you don't actually throw the Apple pop-up, so you don't trigger the whole, for reals behavior in iOS 14. But as I said, on the supply side, this is a new reality that you'll have to get used to, right? You will, at least per definition, and if Apple sticks with this definition, which at the moment looks like it, once Apple says, okay, grace period is over, you will not be able to initialize any SDK that shows ads without consent either, right? So this is not really a tracking problem. This is more of a monetization problem, right? And we're also talking about, there's no other workaround, right? There's no fingerprinting or nothing, because you're not allowed to initialize the SDK without consent. So if there's an IDFA, there's consent. And that's the only point in which case you can actually show anything. So for the demand side, what does this whole thing mean for the demand side? First of all, the important news for demand side is that you actually have to have a look at SKAdNetwork, right? I mean, so far I know no one paid any attention to it, but you need to understand what Apple's idea is of the data that they want to give you to do your job, right? And SKAdNetwork is pretty peculiar because, in our opinion, it's a bit of a misunderstanding between measurement and analytics, right? Analytics that you could do for yourself, in-house, first party, and mixing it with attribution. And the thing is that SKAdNetwork bundles all of these things into a package that does not have a lot of granularity. Actually, in our kind of experience and the discussions that we have with clients, way too little granularity to actually provide you the kind of ROI precision you need to do your UA as you're doing it today, right? But it is very important that you have a look at it, that you really, chew this through. I'm not going to go through all of these explanations, how it works, but it is important for you to actually get your head around what it means, because only when you actually understand what Apple's vision is, can you go and have a little chat with Apple about, what their idea is, what you need to do your job? Because that is something that it is at the moment that we see is the biggest disconnect, is that Apple doesn't hear enough from publishers that explain to them what you need to actually do UA and why UA is important to you, right? To get your feet wet with the SKAdNetwork, we provide a free brand new dashboard, which is also showcasing our brand new dashboard technology for those of you that are clients and want to see how the dashboard, hopefully in Q4, is going to look like. This is a brand new dashboard that we're currently testing, and we're testing it first with SKAdNetwork. So there's currently a whooping 2 networks that have live support for SKAdNetwork. Do not expect this number to come up specifically during these next 6 months. We're going to talk about why in a second. But it will help you to give you an idea of what data becomes available to you, what can you see, and what it means for you. Because the most important part of this presentation for you UA buyers is that if you look at SKAdNetwork and go like, that's not going to cut it for me, you need to have to sit down and talk to your App Store representative and explain to them why this doesn't work for you, right? As you can imagine, Apple's a pretty big company, and the only people they're really interested in is you. They are publishers, right? They don't listen to us. They don't like, having a big discussion with us. They like to listen to you. That means that if you look at SKAdNetwork and say, oh, that doesn't look great, and six months down the line, that's not going to be able to, do the job for me, by all means, do voice your concerns, right? There is a lot of discussion ongoing at the moment. What are viable alternatives to having access to the IDFA? Because the IDFA has a lot of issues with being able to provide third parties with enough information to start profiling users via, exchanges and all these kind of things. You have all of these data platforms and collectives and what have you not that are doing things that is just, according at least to the GDPR, straight down illegal. And Apple doesn't like these things. They don't want that to be a thing, right? We have to understand that. So going to Apple, say like, we always want the IDFA is not going to be a solution. But we said, look, one very viable solution is actually without any device IDs is to look at how deep linking works today between 2 apps, right? You can deep link from app A to app B, and that works just fine as long as both apps are installed. The suggestion that we have, and that you might want to make too, is to say, hey, while we're at it, why not fix deferred deep linking once and for all, and actually have deferred deep linking be the attribution mechanism. Effectively, it would work very much like a referrer, just slightly nicer, right? You'd be able to say, hey, please install this app and then show this screen, jump to this screen, or perform this action in the app. And the operating system would take care of it. And as a piggyback onto the deep link, you can attach all the attribution information you need. If that would be a thing, you wouldn't actually need the IDFA or any device ID at all, right? This would mean that we no longer need device IDs. We can identify and install with a randomly generated local device ID, or not even device ID, it's an install ID in that case, and be just fine. But it is your job to talk to Apple because, again, for many of the players in the industry, it's very difficult to get a hold of Apple. Most of you have an App Store representative if you're big enough. And we strongly suggest that you're actually doing that. So, because, as I just explained, as attribution works today, will only work for the next 6 months, right? And by that point in time, either both supply and demand have figured out how to get a reasonable opt-in rate. And the good news is we've seen with tests, we've seen anywhere between 70 and 90% opt-in rate, depending on how you word these things, right? It is possible. Users are not genuinely averse to this if you explain it right. If the first thing you throw is a pop-up that says this app wants to track you across multiple apps and websites, yeah, that's not going to work, right? But what we've seen is that if properly explained, it works, specifically on the supply side. On the demand side, it can be made to work too if you explain to your users that you need user acquisition to actually, provide them with a service that they come to love, and that, your growth depends on the ability to be able to, read their IDFA. So you should probably start preparing for that future as well, because in that case, of course, attribution would pretty much work exactly like you used to. From our side, what can we do to help you with iOS 14? First of all, If you read our blog, we've written a lot of information and articles about all the kind of things, the delay that was coming in, what this means in terms of technical implementation. We talk about SKAdNetwork. We talk about all of these kind of things in the best kind of most comprehensive kind of way to educate you and to explain to you what's actually going on, right? The other one that you saw, we have full built-in SKAdNetwork ready. It's free. You can use it. You can try it out. You can see how it works for you, right? And so that's pretty much what we can do. We are also, your account managers have all been trained on the topic. If you have any questions, you can come to us. You can reach out. We're spending a lot of time and money internally to make sure everyone, can be helpful. We're trying not to speculate too much, not trying to kind of, make this thing even more crazy or more hysteria. As you see, we kind of anticipated the delay pretty early on, as it became clear to us that no one was really able to comply with these rules. But it was when, a lot of people were still yelling that the end is nigh. The end isn't nigh. It's something that we all can collectively manage, but it's something that you, sadly have to do yourself, with us helping you as best as we can. All right. So as I said, we're also throwing in free audience builder for these clients that are currently using the audience builder. We're going to give a discount on that due to the time, at the moment, having IDFA available or not, it's going to be something we're going to see. So for iOS, the audience builder is also available for free now. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to actually look at all of these messages in chat and see if there was any questions in there, because there was a whole lot of those. Well, as I said, ad revenue without IDFA is going to be interesting if Apple follows through on the exact definition of third-party SDKs, which at the moment they told us they will do. Okay, if anyone else has any questions, happy to answer them. I think there's a couple of seconds delay between the video and the screen. So I'm just going to wait a little moment. Otherwise, thank you. Okay, looks like there's no questions. Well then, thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Paul. This was quite insightful for some of us, I guess. I think there was one or two more questions in the YouTube chat, so maybe we can go through them later on and you can respond to them. My own question was like, is there really just two networks live with SKAdNetwork at the moment? Would be cool to know. And I think that was it. Next up is a game. Stay with us. Welcome back. With me this time, the player that you can see now is the amazing and famous Thomas Petit. Thomas, say hi to the audience.
Hi everyone. This is tough to be playing and talking, but I hope it's gonna happen fine.
I'm pretty sure your multitasking is advanced level.
I'm usually pretty good at multitasking, but this game is tough.
How should we introduce you? I mean, you worked for a long time at 8fit, but then after that, I actually lost a little bit track. You're here and there and everywhere somehow, and you consult a lot of clients yourself, right? As a growth marketing specialist, or how would you introduce yourself?
Actually, they ask me often that question, and I never know how to answer. I never liked having titles. At my years at 8fit, I was just calling myself growth team member. I never had any title. And since I moved and I'm a freelance, I sort of do consulting for people, but because I don't like to call it that, I don't have a title either. So I just try to help apps grow. That's what I'm doing. And I also think titles, like, they're very made for company roles, and I don't have any company. I'm working for myself. I specifically didn't want to build one and remain independent, but it's also about the field. And while I started on the UA side, I want to believe that what I'm consulting on is actually much bigger than UA, and sometimes is product related, sometimes data, sometimes organizational, strategic. So that's why I don't have a title. But if you want to summarize it, I basically love to give my opinion, and some people pay me for it. If they don't,
so you're basically a visionary and thought leader.
Oof, I wouldn't go that far, no.
Just jokes. You saw the presentation from Paul, I guess, or at least you know what's happening on Adjust side. What's your take on all these developments? Should we talk to Apple, as Paul suggested, and ask for this deferred deep linking attribution solution, or what's your take on this whole topic?
I mean, there's a lot of subtopics for sure, but I would agree with Paul that, I do believe for the long term, Apple is going in the right direction. They lack feedback to launch it so early, and that's why they delayed it. And I think there's still a lot of feedback going on now. They don't listen to all the developers. I mean, of course, if you're big, maybe they will listen, but that's not the. I work for a lot of early stage who don't have an Apple representative and certainly don't have much voice to say, but there are lots of players in the industry that Apple is listening to. And I think we have to tell them a bunch of things, which it is happening, and I'm all focused about the change we can bring to that, which is not about delaying it more or saying SKA won't work for what I need, because Apple is going to go through with it. For me, it's more incremental, and if Apple actually did listen to me, which I don't think they do, the one point I will insist on is how events are managed, which eventually I think is bad for app developer, user, and Apple combined in the current state. And I really hope that by January, Apple will release SKA 2.1, like sort of an iteration of what there is now. And there's lots of things I don't expect to change, like granularity on creatives or the constant frame. But I do hope that they will improve a little bit, like callbacks and funnel tracking, because having just like so limited data is actually really bad for everybody in the ecosystem, like developers, user, Apple, and eventually vendors, because they live out of all these people. So if they would call me, that's what I would like sort of insist on. But there's lots of subtopics that need their scrutiny. And another one I think that is not too much talked about is web to app journeys. And that's where, of course, deferred deep link would be awesome, because they would provide better UX and some way to attribute without, oh shit, I did 440. I did my best time. So just for the audience, what you've been looking at is actually Paul, I think. Yes, and he did 420. I'm only 20 seconds behind. I'm very proud.
But still behind.
I mean, he's a professional driver.
True. Racer.
I did 7 minutes on the test run. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, there's lots of subtopics here. I'm excited for the panel to run through it. There's the consent one. There's how do you deal with events and how different networks are going to deal with that. I think here there's a major concern about granularity, not in terms of user level data, but in terms of creative, because what has enabled UA to work well in recent times is the fact we have user level data for optimization and event and value optimization on Facebook and Google and others that have been very powerful. But the other one is how more sophisticated our creative process and testing these days. And here we've got a major problem. There is really something the limitation of campaigns and creative and the limitation of what we can test. It's like a lot of people are gonna go back 4 years ago. And here, I believe Apple should also work in a solution that doesn't need user level data, but still does provide more creative granularity, because it's in the interest of everybody. And not only for Facebook and Google for us to give them more money, but actually to provide better creative, to understand what ticks with audience. Otherwise, it's all going to be very generic. And yeah, it's bad for app developers, it's bad for users.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a good starting point for actually the next topic. So thanks, Thomas. Thanks for playing. See you next on the panel discussion about exactly this topic, iOS 14 and its impact on the ad industry. On this panel, we will have Thomas again. We will have Claire Rosine from Product Madness. We will have Saulo Marti from OLIS and Juan Guterres from Glovo. So stay with us in 1 minute. All right, I hope you enjoyed it so far. Please leave your thoughts in the chat or maybe later, if possible, in the comments. We will have the panel discussion up in just 1 minute. Stay with us. And this time I'm not alone. We've got some amazing panelists here. But maybe to make it very quick and short for our viewers, it would be amazing if you could introduce yourself in just like one sentence, very short. Juan, start.
Hey there, thank you for having me. Juan Guter, doing performance marketing at Globo.
Claire.
Hello, thank you for inviting me as well. I'm Claire Rosin, UA manager at Product Manage Social Casino app.
Saulo.
Hi, I'm Saulo. I'm CMO at Olist, startup down here in Brazil.
And Thomas, we had already.
Come on, I'm an out of rally player at Grow to Play.
Play2GROW.
Play2GROW, fuck.
That was a good start. Need to work on the branding. Okay, but it's the first time. You're excused. Maybe one quick question. I think most of us here in Europe know what Globo is and what Product Madness is, but what is Olist again, Saulo? Maybe a quick intro?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in Berlin in different companies, in Europe in different companies, and I recently moved back to Brazil. Olist is a platform for online stores or for merchants to be able to sell more. So we kind of supercharge sales. Think of us kind of what's in between Shopify and Amazon.
Okay. But are you addressing consumers or businesses in your marketing?
Mostly businesses, but at the end of the day, our businesses are small businesses that are run by like the owner. So we target as if they were consumers, but they're essentially, but it's very small. Yeah.
Got it. All right. Cool. I guess you all have seen the presentation from Paul, and we wanted to talk about the iOS 14 changes coming up. Thomas gave already his first ideas and opinions, but maybe Claire, what is your take on Paul's presentation? Should we talk to Apple a little more aggressive even? I mean, Product Madness certainly has some weight in this discussion. What's your take on all this?
So definitely, I think it was a really great presentation. I think it summarized really well all what we have seen in the past month. It was kind of for everyone kind of wanted to understand the things. So I think the main thing is that each advertiser will have to choose between two frameworks, like as he said, like ATT framework or SKAdNetwork or even both, which is a big change because of course, like attribution is in the core of UA, and it will just reset all the data, the past data we have on our algorithm. So I think it's a big decision to take as the one of changing, for instance, the business model of each app because of the timer we have with iOS 14, for instance. So it will really be like really new way of doing UA, less deterministic and more probabilistic, which is not something really bad, I think, because we know that with attribution, it's kind of sometimes tricky to always want to have the last click attribution because we know we already reach our user in maybe like 3 or 4 other channels. So I think it's kind of fair, and even for the user to ask for the consent, and it will make a UA team work more closely to product team and optimize more on the consent and think the strategy inside the game, and also work really closely with CRM team. Because I think at the end, like we are speaking a lot of audiences with the retargeting and everything, but at the end of the day, like customer relationship, like they are using game ID or for instance, other ID like emails to reach the user. So they still will have the ability anyway to get the value from the user. I think like the top of the funnel advertising will be better, and because it will be higher quality, maybe with some longest playable to attract the user, some mini games where the user will really see the USPs of the game, and after he will have to fully and really fast made a decision if he wants to make a purchase or not. So really, really exciting on my side.
Yeah, that's true. I also see many developers pushing in this direction. On the flip side, I see a lot talking about web funnels models again, so that they pick up the users on the normal web interface and then just offer them, hey, now after payment you can switch to the app. Saulo, what is your take here? Your advertising model is a little bit of a mix. Is IDFA so important for your business, actually?
It's not. So for us, we're not going to see that much of an impact. But what we do see is the entire industry shifting towards more privacy in general is going to force all of us to be better with our product. That's my, like, I know this is kind of an obvious take, but I truly believe that we're not going to be able to find like those golden eggs through performance marketing as easily as we could before, where it's like that perfect audience where we can just expand it continuously and things like that. So it's going to force us to actually look more holistically and look at the quality of our product more and more, so that we can drive growth from a product-led strategy rather than from a UA-led strategy. So for us, there's not going to be that much of an impact. Where it is going to drive a lot of impact is where we generate liquidity for our merchants, for example, where we drive ads, like targeted ads for someone to buy a product, right? So like e-commerce and things like that. That is starting to become more of a pain point. So we're still going to have those funnels. We're still going to have like the web funnels that are enriched, but where you could just simply easily do it like through mobile is going to get harder. But I do believe, to your point, original point about like Paul's presentation, I do believe that yes, the bigger companies need to be more aggressive with Apple. I think everyone needs to be more aggressive with Apple.
Probably. Juan, at Glovo, you certainly have a massive BI team working with a lot of data points, right? I mean, food delivery, you do everything delivery in the end of the day, right? It's collecting multiple data points from so many people. How do you see this changing in this particular business? I believe retargeting plays a big role for food delivery, coupons, these kind of things. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes, of course. I would believe that it's a huge change. Our strategy was completely flipped. As Saulo, we have more audience on Android rather than iOS. But still, we have to consider that this might be impacting on Android too in the next coming of years. So we are in the middle of the storm with actually being impacted, so we have to adapt. Really happy to see what Just is working on. Looking forward to see what data we can actually get, how accurate are the models that are being developed, and how our team is actually moving closer, as Claire was saying, to product. We have to cooperate to get the opt-in percentage high to actually have an idea of what is our performance for now in iOS.
Is any of you already starting asking for opt-ins on iOS?
For my case, actually, it's something that we are developing, starting to A/B test soon. But I have seen many companies actually done so. It's hope to actually get more information on that.
I've seen one and it was ugly as fuck. I've seen one example and that screen was like one of the ugliest I've seen, and I already didn't believe a very high percentage was going to be consented. When I saw that test, I said, okay, nobody's going to click on that one. And actually a lot of people clicked on that ugly screen. So there is hope for those who will do it nicely.
Be strong. Claire, are you experimenting with those screens already?
So at the moment, I think it's in process, but from my past experience in CRM, because I used to work for Mappy in France, which is a Google Maps, French Google Maps, and so I worked towards the opt-in rate for GDPR and stuff. And I'm really optimistic about it. I think if you do it the right way and you are really honest and transparent with your user, and you tell him like what is the added value of doing it, it's going to be okay. But also it will depend on the kind of application you are. Because for instance, Mappy is something like a GPS. So of course, the user agree to give localization and everything. But I think it will really depend on the vertical you're working on, definitely.
Okay, I see dating getting issues with that probably, right? Because I want to keep my data private, maybe more private than maybe in e-commerce or something like that. I can imagine. Let's see what the reality is. Saulo, are you experimenting with those kind of screens already? You nodded.
Yeah, but for us, it's much easier because at the end of the day, the reason why we need the information serves our customers so much better. So we justify it very well. So asking them to opt into like whatever it is that we do is kind of within the flow of what they need from us. Because we're not going to use it as retargeting, because although it's B2B/B2C, because it's a very small business, you can't just target based on their behavior online because it's very different. So we use very little like lookalike ads. We use very little strategies that depend on this. So for us, it hasn't really been that impactful, but our legal team forced us to already input those screens in place. So yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
Experimenting, not because we have to, but because we're forced to.
Quick question from your own user behavior, maybe Thomas first. I know you are a little bit privacy concerned yourself, using Facebook apps and these kind of things. When have you clicked on a website, do not allow cookies the last time? Do you do this regularly?
Actually, I almost never allow cookie. I've got a script that blocks all this shit because it's unbrowsable with them. Like, I mean,
on a mobile phone?
Yeah, you can do on some mobile phone if you don't use Safari or Chrome. There are some other browsers, but my point is, I believe we're the 0-1%, not of rich people, but of weird people, of weird behavior. Like us marketers, our behavior is not representative. And honestly, if you extrapolate your idea as an individual to what is going to work for your product, regardless if it's related to concept or something else, you're dead. I mean, look at the creatives, for example. The one I like most, they're always the one who underperform the most. So I learned over the years that my opinion doesn't count as like my empathy for user has to be, I need to let them talk because I have no fucking clue what they're thinking. So I'm never thinking, oh, what would make me click on the consent thing? I mean, I don't click on ads unless it's my competitor to see the landing page. So don't extrapolate we're such a tiny substructure of the society. I think it's the wrong way of thinking. You just that's why the tests are important, because I think our assumption, a lot of them, they're going to be beaten. Consent is higher than expected. And I mean, there's a lot of our assumptions that are completely wrong here, which makes testing even more important.
Understood. I mean, I understand that you are maybe not clicking every ad. I do the opposite, to actually manipulate my browsing feed. So I click things that I like to see to get retargeted with nice ads.
Get several browsers, you know?
But a little bit to that point, Thomas, that you mentioned how like we're not the use case. I would agree that we're not the use case for most, like, I don't know, maybe gaming or subscription apps, because we kind of know what we know all the ones that exist, basically. Like we're constantly researching, etc., things like that. But in general, I see myself clicking and consenting so much when it comes to, especially shopping, when I'm looking for something specific and it keeps popping up in my feed. I never worry about like, oh, I'm not going to consent. And I know how much of and I'm in the industry, so I would just imagine someone who's not in it, who doesn't know what this means, like consent is much higher because of that, because people are just like, yeah, whatever, let me get to my content as fast as I can because I don't care. And that's what I've been seeing as most behavior.
I agree with that, but one thing that's annoying for that is we can't bundle all this consent, and Claire mentioned that the experience with GDPR, and I usually agree with Claire, but I don't agree on that one, because in GDPR, you're actually free to do whatever UX you want. And I mean, there's a bunch of big companies that have very dark pattern around the GDPR consent. Here, Apple doesn't want us to circumvent that. So the closest experience is more like the push notification, which, okay, you can put a pre-screen and there is this little text that you can personalize, but it's very little. And my concern here is that it's terrible for UX, because we're going to have, oh yeah, I consent to GDPR, and then the push one, and then the location one, and then let's not call it the IDFA one, but the ATT one is going to be, okay, where's my product? I've clicked 5 times on these stupid things, and we can't really bundle them, you know? But if you ask most users, say, yeah, I want to consent on every crap and get to my product right now, and it's not how it's going to happen, and the UX is going to be worse here. Thing is, if you enable people to do whatever they want, like in GDPR, most of these pop-up they're not compliant.
Yeah, that's really true. And actually, like I was more speaking because we re-asked the opt-in for the push notification, and actually we saw it worked as well. But I totally agree with you. Like I think like Apple is having a lot of rules on how we can use this opt-in, and I mean we all know why. It's because they want us to use the SKAdNetwork where you don't even need actually to ask the user the permission, which is even worse. So definitely, I agree also on the view of Thomas, what he said.
And you know what I said before we jump into the panel, that I think there will be change in SKA in particular. I said it because I think it's bad for the user. So obviously piling 5 or 5 consent is bad UX. The other one is like the stupid timer thing. And Claire said we're already researching how we can change our product to have like more determining, like to have more events in the first 24 hours that are correlating with long-term value. I think this is Apple, where Apple should iterate, because this is so bad. I mean, subscription app were good. Everybody subscribe on the first day and then never think about it again. So that's perfect. Social casino is like almost the opposite end of the spectrum, where you need the user to develop over weeks or sometimes months to understand that this is a long-term return user, and it's really hard to detect. So this product change, I think they're going to be in the wrong direction of forcing people to do things in the first day, just so that we can predict all these things. And eventually, this is bad for the whole Apple ecosystem, because we're going to rush into an aggressive stream of pushing people into stuff because we need to, not because it's a nice experience to them. And I think that's where they should think twice about this limitation on the timer, because I think it's going to be really bad for UX and it's bad for Apple in general.
What do you think? We had the presentation from Anya about influencer marketing and had the discussion about performance and these kind of things. I mean, even if you don't pay for performance on influencers, you still want to measure them, right? How do you think this will change? By the way, I know, Saulo, you got to leave, right? Thanks for being here. If there's any chance, maybe answer questions later on in the chat.
Of course.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
This is something where I'm a little bit concerned that also there is this SKAdNetwork thing has not been built for, I mean, Apple's view on advertising is really small. We're not only advertising on Facebook, Google, and programmatic. There's a lot of web to app activity, and this network is not planned for that. Like, I can't declare my website as being a network and track it through SKA today. So there's a lot of, and this is also true for the influencer, there's a lot of part of extrapolation no matter what, but the tracked part that we have today based on that link is actually super helpful to understand that those cohorts, they behave so differently than the rest. If you start assuming, yeah, there's that many install, yeah, but how are they actually behaving? And that's what the tracking link is there for, even if it's 10 or 20% of the whole impact. And this is another thing where Apple should iterate a little bit on SKA of providing more. I'd say it's more web in general, because that applies to influencer for the track link, but that applies for a lot of use case, Outbrain and Taboola, your own website, virality stuff. The deep link would be a great like sort of workaround if they organize it in a nice way. But having nothing for the web is going to make, I mean, at the same time, influencers are going to grow in importance because the other networks are going to be a little bit more shaky in terms of optimization. But at the same time, our ability to understand which audience actually tick with our product is going to be less than it used to be. And that's a bit of a problem.
I see the same. Juan, in Glovo, I can imagine you also have a lot of web traffic, right? Is there anything happening on putting resources on web development, or what's your take? Should you concentrate more on iOS in the future?
I think web is actually taking more and more protagonization after this, as many products besides Glovo is actually thinking about going through the web to actually get information. We are investing on it. We'll be looking for new channels so we can actually keep the best tracking and measurement across everything that we can do. it's going to be, I think, yes, as Thomas was saying, SKAdNetworks is something really limited. Even what we have heard from Facebook and Google, limitations upon number of campaigns, number of ads that you can actually run. Something that it's a headache for us when you are actually covering 22 countries, really a lot of different languages. So I would expect for next year that we have more news from them. We have to push. This is something that it's on our side because no one else is going to do it. So as closer as we can be with every stakeholder on the industry to have something that works as for the user, as for the companies, because at the end we want to show ads that are relevant for the user. And this is something that we are all together in this one.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe that services like Glovo, you mentioned GPS-based services, and especially then I want to know where my delivery driver is and so on. So I can imagine that if you explain well why you need tracking, that many people will opt in to actually share their location and these kind of things, right? And you also need a lot of personal data for the transaction itself already.
Yeah, of course, I believe that at the end, it's going to be a key of actually getting the right copies, explaining why we actually need this, how to ask it, when to ask it, to push the rate up. So it's a bit of work on growth to crack these things up and have new synergies with different teams that maybe before we weren't that used to, but with the new reality, we have.
There was one question from the audience, William Liu Sanchez was asking if opt-in rates could be maybe high for your own property, your own app, but it's maybe not so high on many other properties. Like tracking will still be kind of broken for us, right? How do you see UA might change in that matter? Like, will maybe IDFA traffic be more expensive? Non-IDFA traffic be cheaper? Would you buy differently in the future yourself, maybe? Claire?
Go Claire.
So definitely, like, I think it's going to change a lot because at the moment, if we, depending on the adoption rate of the opt-in rate, we are going to have more or less IDFA. And I mean, as Thomas said, like social casino is a market with a lot of re-engagement. So it's going to change for us like a lot. So if we don't have an audience size big enough, we really have to see if it's worth to do some re-engagement, because on some platform you already have such a limited reach that you already have to optimize for link clicks, for instance. So it might doesn't work depending on the new price you are going to have. And I think on that text also, like some social media platforms should also see the ways it charges, because we are going to be from a contextual targeting, which is not behavioral at all, so which should be less pricey. So I really hope, to be honest, that social media, they will adapt themselves and change the pricing, because at the end of the day, I mean, I think a lot of people tried already like the AA campaign on Facebook. I wouldn't compare it to a basic video campaign where Facebook has like the information from the SDKs and even like in the app, depending on the interest and everything. So I think advertising will change, and we will have to be more flexible, like less on the last click attribution. And that's where actually I think it will show some opportunities for some channel maybe misunderstood, like influence marketing, for instance, and really show like the importance of organics and how UA teams can actually make organic be even better, because I think this is something definitely important, even if the tracking will be challenging on iOS.
Yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned. Actually, performance marketing teams are very often, let's say, incentivized by attributed count of installs and growth numbers, right? But actually, I haven't seen many teams being incentivized on any kind of incremental growth for the overall company development or something like that, right? So it was just like, hey, my Facebook channel is much better than your Twitter channel. But like the overall development very often wasn't involved in that matter, right? Is it maybe different in global? How do your teams work here?
I would say like, yes, we have that point of performance. We try to look at every number, but at the end, when you have less data, less information, you have to take a more strategic decision. If we have aggregated data, you have to adapt your report to actually show you a number that is representative for the channel and how much that channel could be able to scale or what you could actually see before. So I would say we have to be swift, as Claire said. We have to be quick into, okay, what we are seeing right now, what tools do we have, as retargeting is going to be basically that. What else we can do? Also, I believe Facebook, Google will try to reshape themselves really quickly. So overall, we have to take every tools as the main ones, as influencers to make an overall strategy for your acquisition.
All right, we need to come to an end and swap over to the last game round. But maybe allow me one closing question. What if there was no tracking at all from tomorrow? How would you change your buying behavior, your advertising behavior? Start with who wants? Juan.
Certainly a nightmare. I please just with the chaos that has been IDFA, it's just no tracking at all. It would be a complete nightmare for us that we base our decision on data. I would believe that we go to an old era that we have maybe 1-2 KPIs and we try to take decisions by gut. But as Thomas was saying, it's like we are completely biased. We are not representative for our customers. So, well, building up models, I guess.
My take here is that, that it's really bad from a short-term point of view. It's really bad from a tactical point of view. Like, we lose all this interesting creative iteration that brings a lot of learning, and definitely the product that were behavioral based, like UAC or AAA, there will be lesson in their optimization, and in the short term that will impact. But actually, on the long term, it might make us smarter, because you have to force more modelization on incrementality, media mix model. And actually, like, we've been so fucking blind for 5 years, like just believing that Facebook and Google were working so well. Why? Because they got first grabs from attribution, from Adjust and the other MMPs. I mean, they get first grabs. So obviously, when somebody sees your ad in 5 different networks, they will get it. And having less tracking, or having, like you say, maybe no tracking potentially, is going to be a huge problem on the tactical level, but it's actually going to open our eyes on the strategic level of what I've been doing all these years. I've just been swallowing this because it was the easy one. It's there. Look at the data. And actually, a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, my team is super data driven. I'm like, yeah, let's see what kind of data you're working on. You know, how is this data model actually built in the first place? It's great to follow the data, but it's better to look how it's constituted. And I think eventually we will get smarter on that. And I think it's one of the nice challenge for marketers. It's not like UA is dead or anything. There's a lot of things that are going to be less: retargeting, creative, behavioral optimization. But there's a lot of area of focus that are super interesting, and where we might get a little bit smarter and look at the 2018 UA people and say, huh, this dumb fuck, they were just taking the last clicks, you know? Okay,
do you think
that was my stance.
So, I mean, as usual, I totally agree with Thomas. Like, I think it's a really good take. I used to work in dating. Dating is mostly, it's a subscription model, and it's mostly on websites. So yeah, it's true that people convert directly, also because they need a date. But anyway, like on dating, you actually have a lot of offline acquisition, and it's named acquisition. And you don't need ADFA to do offline acquisition. I see on the gaming space, like a lot of advertisers have kind of daily active user issue because the product life cycle is like at the end of life and stuff like this. So I think it's going to be good at the end of the day, because maybe like they're going to consider some branding things that they didn't buy in the past, or they wouldn't have been considering because they were really click based. So I think it's going to really like unlock some new opportunities. Like, for instance, if my slot gamer is not on Facebook because I can't target him and stuff, I'm pretty sure he's going to watch the last stream of the biggest slot gamer on YouTube, for instance, in US. So I would be pleased, to be honest, to interact with my user also that way and care more about organic, about featuring, and all those organic uplifts that also enhance my user acquisition at the end, because it's like ASO, for instance. Like if your landing page is terrible, your CPI will be terrible because you will have a shitty CVR. So I think it's good. To me, I think we need to open our mind to it and really be even more data oriented, because we will need to be probabilistic. And I think that's going to be good. You know, like I think the most known probabilistic method is on the face recognition. Like it's actually a predicted algorithm that says, so you are Andre, and I'm going to find all your picture that looks like you. So this is prediction, and this is working pretty well. So I'm pretty confident in all what is prediction and data at the moment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hear you see a lot of opportunities. You all see a lot of opportunities here, actually, like product improvements and these kind of things. So thank you very much for the panel. Thanks for being here. It was quite insightful for me, at least. I don't know what the audience thinks. Let's see. So I let you go now, and we are jumping into the next game round. Thanks. Have a good one. All right, so this was an exciting panel. Next part is Paul playing with us, and Paul from Adjust, just to remind you. So if you still have questions, stay with us and put them in a chat. I'm trying to ask him while we play. Stay with us.
Alrighty.
What do you think? I see you're typing something into the chat, like the SAN part was inaccurate. They do not have first grabs. What do you mean with this?
Because Thomas said that the ZANs actually get the first call on attribution. That's not how this works. If a ZAN click is earlier than another click, they don't get attribution. And we actually regularly check the patterns of the ZAN clicks if they make sense, right? Or if they're just like sending us pretend clicks that are, let's say, impossibly early. So it's not true that if there was 5 clicks that always the ZAN wins. Actually, the opposite, if we look at the real data, the opposite is true, right? With stuff like the Mintigrel SDK, for example. If Thomas would be right, Mintigrel wouldn't make any money with the thing that they got called out for. But it worked, which means that all MMPs, and I don't know a single one that actually just gives blanket attribution to any ZAN clicks. We all look at the time frame, we all look at the patterns of the clicks that they're sending us. I mean, sure, there's some stuff with like the video views where we might have a different opinion, but overall that's extremely inaccurate, right? So just felt that was to kind of point out. Also, it's extremely difficult to drive importance in time. Holy shit!
Everyone had this challenge.
That's a win.
I can understand. Maybe it's a misunderstanding also. From my perspective, maybe what Thomas means with this is like Facebook is, as an example, Facebook is so powerful with all its property on our devices that no matter who else served an ad to me, at some point I will go back to Instagram, will go back to Facebook, or will open the Messenger and see the other ad. And then it gets attributed to Facebook again. Maybe that's one opinion.
That's still not true, because statistically speaking, what we see is that the other way around. Weirdly enough, like let's say from a gut feeling, I would tend to agree. But since we just did the investigation, we actually looked which networks have last click compared to the others, how many lose out. And the ZANs are all these networks that actually, on average, lose a couple % more than the others. Because typically it is that the more direct networks are more targeted on an individual user and actually spend a little bit more to convince the user to actually do it. But I mean, we're talking about like 3 or 4% on average, so it's nothing mega relevant. But again, it's not that ZANs on average take the cake from other networks. That's not true.
Okay, understand. So you just announced a new solution from Adjust, right, for the SKAdNetwork in particular. How do you call it? SKAD dashboard?
Yes, it's SKAdNetwork dashboard. We went really out in the naming here.
You need to find a selling name here.
Well, it's free, so the selling bit we hope is not that difficult. It's to give to kind of two birds, one stone. We want people to see our new dashboard. There's some real cool modular stuff in there. And at the same time, we want people to actually see SKAdNetwork data in real life, because a lot of people still didn't do their homework and think, hey, maybe just like some smaller changes will do the trick. By the way, we already are on SKAdNetwork 2.1. And the problem is that from the fundamental approach that SKAdNetwork takes, I personally see a very difficult time to satisfy the requirements of a UA manager. Right? Like you will never get the granularity you need, because the problem is, as long as you're allowed to do, say, first-party analytics, however that would look like, and that might be something that suddenly becomes a marketable thing. The thing that you will try to use SKAdNetwork for then is to basically just do attribution, figure out who that user was, and tie that together with the internal analytics that you have. Boom, 409. And I'm fairly confident here. No, the problem really is that any kind of push on SKAdNetwork, more timers, more everything, like more data, more entropy, will allow you to try to get attribution out of this user. And if there's a market for first-party analytics, if there's demand, there will be supply. That's pretty certain. And once you have first-party analytics and you have SKAdNetwork, and SKAdNetwork gives you a little bit more entropy to push through anything that looks like, or that might help you to figure out who this user is, you will use it for attribution. You will not use it for actually analytics, because you have user level or install level granular analytics internally with all the events forever, with all the metadata that you need for the event. Why on earth would you try to do that with SKAdNetwork, right? So there's a distinct conflict, and we're not talking about like a lot more, right? At the moment we have 6-bit. 12-bit is plenty to figure out a user, by the way, right? Which for most apps will do just fine. And so there's a design conflict, and that's why when I was talking about this finding a better solution, I was trying to discuss decoupling the kind of analysis of the data, right, and the measurement and the attribution. Right, measurement is just aggregating the data and doing all the analytics on top of it, while attribution is simply telling you this user comes from there. And I think as long as SKAdNetwork tries to push these two together, and Apple can, of course, say, hey, you can't have third-party SDKs do analytics, but then a lot of people will start doing something or licensing software that is first-party, right, that by all rights and means and definitions is first-party. And you will still be able to do analytics because your app still has to work, right? You have a backend, you have data that you collect. And that means you are able to know an individual user. And with knowing an individual user, there is demand to know where this user comes from, right? And I see an infinite goal conflict in there. It's just it's a logical conundrum. It doesn't have a sensible answer, at least none at the moment. And I hope this is why I was giving the presentation, that more people, first of all, realize that, right? That the more you try to squeeze SKAdNetwork to do more, the more it becomes a tool to do attribution, right? You'll just do attribution with extra steps. It'll become a crappy referrer if you give me 12 bits. That's pretty much what you can do with it, right? And people will if you do that. And so it's important that people understand that, and then look at what it is today. Understand that, the little bit that you might be able to give more might still not be able to satisfy what they want to do. And it's not just about like last click attribution, right? Stuff like deep linking still exists, right? Deep linking would still work as normal attribution. In a lot of campaigns we see, around 20% of all the links we see have a deep link attached to it and actually open the app. So what about this traffic, right? What about all the web traffic? What about all the influencer traffic? So there is a lot of things that we want to see clarify, of course, over the next 6 months, which we're asking. We're working with big clients to come up with solutions that satisfy all the requirements. And I think we're going to see more change coming, right? There's definitely going to be more stuff being rolled out, and I think it's just important that people understand, okay, what's the current game plan? What would I have to do to get consent? On the supply side, I believe that's permanent, so you might as well just get used to it. On the demand side, let's see, right? Maybe you can work with it. And if you don't like SKAdNetwork, and maybe you want to talk to your Apple rep, because that's definitely something that we've seen too little of, right? That people actually discuss these things with Apple, not just like take them. Specifically, if you have an App Store app, if you have a big app, you have that ability, you should use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of app developers are a little bit afraid of actually talking to the Apple representatives in a more clarifying way, like, hey, I need this really, otherwise we both have problems. It's more like, hey, can you please listen to me? But it's not making the point very often. That's what I see, at least.
And again, it's not just about attribution. Like, what if Apple means this third-party SDK initialization without consent extremely literal, which means you can't show ads. Showing ads already satisfies this requirement that would need consent. How do you monetize, right? If your app monetizes with showing ads, and so far your biggest concern is if the inventory is going to be measurable, you might want to think again and see if there's any inventory to measure in the first place, right? You're not allowed to initialize an SDK from an ad network to show anything. And if that's something that's just now sinking in, you might want to, check with someone that can, do something about it. Because there's not much you can lose in that case, right? You don't have to be afraid, because what's the worst case scenario in that case for you?
I think that's trained behavior. I want to get featured.
Well, you no longer make money with it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Right? Not all apps can be subscription-based, right? There's a lot of apps that don't make that much sense subscription-based, and the problem is it's an ecosystem, right? If you say, oh, well, we don't need hyper-casual games because they're daft. First of all, there's like 150 million people every day disagreeing, but the problem with that is that if supply comes down this much, right, and demand stays at roughly the same level, then you're going to have a significant price increase, right? That's just basic economics. And this is going to price out a lot of people, right? Which is probably going to further reduce supply until we're in a really weird demand situation where most UA operations can say, look, I can only buy from the big Zans, but prices there are complete bonkers because there's always someone that is a little more willing to take a loss, right? And the current UA, like the pushing the snowball in front of you, like buying more or spending slightly less than you make back and continuously increasing that is not going to be viable with this. And if you're in this business, right, then you should definitely look into it and realize that is the thing that's at stake, not like measurement, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Paul, this was extremely insightful for me. Thank you for being with us, especially for such a long time. And thanks to the audience for staying with us. If you still have questions, reach out to us, reach out to Paul, put something in the chat, reach out to your Adjust representative, maybe first of all, if you have further questions. And yeah, thanks, Paul. I'll let you go now.
All right. Thank you. Anyone happy to try the fall 3 in again? It's actually kind of hard. All right. Thank you.
Have a good one. All right, thanks for watching. This was quite an experience. We had some technical issues here and there, but I think this overall was good and I hope insightful for most of you. Let's see if we can do this again. Support us with your comments, with your shares, with whatever, to make sure we can set this up once more and find out what else we can talk about. Thank you.